Professor Tajuddin, welcome to our talk show, Being Politically Incorrect.
Thank you very much for inviting.
Today I'm going to ask you questions relating to your article in Free Malaysia Today a few days ago on who will command the Malay vote at GE16, Anwar, Hadi or Zahid. So let's dive into the questions, Prof. Okay. Prof, you said non-Malays have no choice but to choose their PM and be at peace with themselves between three Malay leaders, Hadi Awang, Zahid Hamidi and Anwar Ibrahim. And between the three, you seem to suggest that non-Malays have no choice but to choose Anwar Ibrahim. Why do you think Anwar Ibrahim is the best choice for the non-Malays?
Well, first of all, Waita, I would like to apologize to Malaysians for having to write this article. Because I was hoping that after 60 or 70 years of Merdeka, we would not be having to ask who is the Malay leader, who is the Islamic leader, these kinds of things. I think we should be moving on to a more progressive idea about how we would develop ourselves and having what I call dignity for all people. So I don't really like to write something like this. But then I am an academic, but I am also someone who is very practical and pragmatic. And therefore, after looking at the Malaysian scenario for 25 years, I have to ask this question because this political aspect of our country still revolves after all these years around the idea of what Malayness or the idea of a Malay leader, a strong leader, as well as now it's added on to the idea of Islam. 30 years ago, it's about Malayness, about Malay leadership, a strong leadership. Now, I was hoping that we won't have to ask the question of Malay or Islam or even a leader, because in a democracy, we are all responsible. Okay, we need to all do our part to help develop the nation. So I do not like to have to deal with the idea of a strong leader like Dr. Mahathir, because we've had that, and that's a terrible thing. So when I wrote this, Anwar, Hadi or Zahid, actually the sense here is not just about Malay. Now the political factor that is very, very crucial is about the idea of Islam. Now, the Malay society, and I was going to write an article called A Malaysia Without Anwar, because people seem to be blaming Anwar for all these Islamic issues coming up and things like that. I was going to say that without Anwar even, the way that the Malays think about religion will still be the same. We will still be in the same situation if even Anwar was not around.
So why do you think Anwar is the best bet for non-Malays?
If you were to listen to Anwar's speeches, you will always hear him use the word acceptance, use the word compassion, use the idea of inclusiveness, as well as the idea of dignity for all. I don't think you would listen to any other leader talk like that. Now, the problem...
But UMNO has said that before. After UMNO changed, after having lost big time, UMNO has also said many times that, look, we have to change, we can't take the old tag any longer, we have to be open, we have to be fair to all races. UMNO has also taken that. But yes, you are right, Anwar seemed to be talking about being inclusive. He seemed to be talking, but in the perception of the non-Malays, they don't see action. Just pure talk, no action from Anwar. Why do you think he's not taking any action?
In the first place, when you say that UMNO is now talking about it, now you can see that UMNO of the past is not talking about it, but now they are talking about it. Now, with the recent Perhimpunan Agong UMNO made statements like Khalid Nordin saying things like, we do not use race and religion anymore, things like that. Well, we have to remember, in politics, you are always having to give a certain message to different audience. Akmal Saleh is of the old narrative of UMNO, for the Malays, everything for the Malays. But now you come, people like Khalid Nordin and even Zahid Hamidi many times have said, no, we have to renew ourselves. Tok Mat have been saying that. Now, I'm still waiting whether betul ke dia orang ni cakap, no, because the point here.
You don't think that UMNO has changed?
I think it's very difficult for them to change. Number one, I don't see anyone in their lineup of leadership or even membership that has any idea closest to the concept of then how is a Malay supposed to act? Now, the only person who has that idea of a new Malay is Anwar Ibrahim.
Okay, you say Anwar has the concept of a new Malay, but he has not done anything to show out there that he is being a new Malay. In fact, from the perception of the non-Malays, I'm relating to non-Malays because your article
Correct.
Specifically mentions non-Malays. So from the eyes of non-Malays, Anwar before general election 15, before GE 15 was a different Anwar. For the last probably 17 years, he was a different Anwar. He was championing all races, equality to every other races, being fair to all races. But immediately after taking position as the Prime Minister, Anwar seemed to have discarded his old ideology, and he has now moved far right, becoming more and more Islamic, and that has caused loss of trust among the non-Malays towards him. He has not done anything. That is the accusation against him. What do you have to say about that?
Well, first of all, many people seem to forget that Pakatan Harapan lost the election. They did not win. They only got what, 82, 84 seats? And I saw them, and I was very disappointed, and I saw that they couldn't move, they couldn't do anything, they couldn't invite anybody because all of them were the enemies, the GPS, UMNO, and GRS. They were all the enemies. Until Yang di-Pertuan Agong had suggested and called up these parties, and of course UMNO with Zahid Hamidi has their own calculation, and when they said yes, then only the unity government was formed.
No, before we go into that, Anwar had what, 81, isn't it?
82.
82, okay. 82. He could have struck a deal with Sabah and Sarawak first.
Yeah, that's the problem. No, that's the problem. As I said, they lost the election. And the Prime Minister that you have now is a person that did not win the election, and therefore, in one sense, he is now a leader of a political party with his former enemies.
Yeah, but he has 2/3 majority, right?
I know, but the point here is that if you have 2/3 majority and you want to put anything through, like people saying that he has relegated on his manifesto, how can you have the manifesto when you have a different coalition of political parties now?
I agree with that. Now, let's say, let's say, I do agree with you on that point. He has got 82 seats. He has got Barisan with him. He has got Sabah, Sarawak, 2/3 majority, right? Now, you said he is not able to do anything because he didn't win the elections, but he's running a unity government. Now, there is no evidence in the public domain that Barisan Nasional with their 30 MPs, Sabah and Sarawak are preventing him from doing anything for the non-Malays. There's no evidence. But he himself has not publicly said that he's unable to run the government because he's not getting support from the coalition partners. But what he is doing in the public eye, he is becoming more and more Islamic-centric when 2/3 the other parties that he has, Sabah, Sarawak, are not pro-Islamic. Right? PAS is, yes, probably not even Bersatu. Right? But he has not said anything that he is having problems with his counterparts in the party. Yet he has not done anything tangible for the non-Malays. Why is that so?
If you must understand, if you were UMNO, what would you be doing strategizing for the future? Because a political party doesn't live or survive only for one term. They have to look for long term. So they are looking at how the situation is going to be, whether they will be with Pakatan Harapan or they will be on their own, or they will be with Perikatan Nasional. You heard again, you look at the Perhimpunan Agong that has recently been completed. Akmal was saying...
No, let's leave Barisan for the moment. I'm talking about Anwar Ibrahim.
I know.
What is his problem?
I know, that's the thing, you see. Because everybody is so focused on the idea of oh, you are now the Prime Minister, therefore you should do this, 1, 2, 3, 4. People have...
So are you trying to say that there are people outside his party who are pressuring him to be more Islamic?
No, the idea here is that by looking at what's happened, number one, let's look at what Tun Mahathir had done during his time as Prime Minister. He controlled all, okay, that one is undisputed. There was no coalition government and he controlled all, not just control, but also control in a way, like giving titles, giving projects, and also having all the so-called files with the special branch. Nobody dares to say.
But Anwar has also, put many of his opponents under charge, But he may say that that's a court action, but Muhyiddin is charged, I think Hamza's son is charged. So many of the opposition members are also being charged.
Yes, simply because you need to also understand that once Anwar became Prime Minister, not only he has to deal with the baggage of 60 years, and all the hutangs and all other policies.
No, we are not going to that. I'm just confining the question to why isn't he able to do anything tangible for the non-Malays?
Because this one, what people say that what you are seeing at, you are not seeing in. Okay, what you are seeing at, oh, he is becoming more Islamic, he is being this and he is being that. Well, if I were to answer in a very simple way at the moment, what happened during GE15? We saw the Malays voting for Parti Islam Malaysia. Now, I used to support Parti Islam Malaysia. Getting what? 44 seats was unthinkable. Is not there, But suddenly, that is what happened. And so this is something that people must understand. And after that, you can see all the so-called conflict between race now is being replaced with the idea of Islamic. Anything, it must be Islamic. The stalking issue, the alcohol, you name it, I've collected so many issues. So that thing has become something central. Now with the social media, it's getting worse and worse. And so when you are confronted with this kind of control, and I wrote in an article saying, the policies of the country, if it's made by any ministry or minister, is no longer powerful or influential. It's now the social media or the mosque. These are the two things that control the minds. So that's number one. Number two, we look at the idea of, as I say, I don't like to bring race into the discussion of politics so much, but race here determines a certain political party. There are three political parties vying for the votes of the Malays. You have UMNO.
No, but elections are
over. Bersatu.
Elections are over now. He has got clear 5 years.
I don't know. Okay, for a politician, elections are never over. Okay, it's ongoing all the time.
But don't you think after the election he should start getting to his work, implement whatever that he promised, get the cooperation of Barisan, get the cooperation of Sabah and Sarawak, and start implementing, start modernizing the country, start opening up the country. Don't you think he should be doing that? But he's busy doing something else.
No, I think that's the thing, is it? When you look at some of the things that he's been doing, he is opening things up. But you cannot open things up like, suddenly macam tu. You have to have a certain language because you are trying to give the idea that, look, we're not threatening the Malay interests in a certain way by opening up. Because he's being charged by the Malays as being liberal, progressive, like most of the time I'm being accused of, which I said, yes, that's what I'm trying to be doing. But those are positive things for the Malays. But the Malays don't see it that way. They have been conditioned by UMNO and by the education in religion to be in this tempurung. Tempurung means you have to be safe. Okay, in order to be safe, you must be with a strong political party which is Malay, and also a leader which shows strength about being.
Okay, now,
but if you ask me, I don't believe in all this Malay thing or whatever Islamic thing. You have to just be a good leader. But politics is not the same.
But do you agree? But this thing is happening over the last 30 years, especially.
Sorry,
the Malay and pro-Islam is more prevalent in the last 30 years. Do you agree with that?
Because you have to see the development of the Malay mind. Okay.
Yeah, that's why I'm getting at. So basically, what I'm saying I'm saying this is Anwar Ibrahim's fault, because when he was in the government due to Mahathir's time, he was the one who actually injected Islamic values into the government system. He was the one who kind of Islamized many of the government systems and administration and all that. So that has developed over a period of time. Today it has become uncontrollable because of him. Do you agree with that?
Now, that is the prevalent or perception that it was Anwar who brought in all this so-called Islamic reform.
It was him, right?
Now, if you were to look at the wider perspective, that's why I said if I were to write something called Malaysia without Anwar, we would still be in the same situation. The thing was that Parti Islam Malaysia was not very popular at one time. Okay, they were the one who put up the idea of a political Islam. All right. Now, the UMNO is still with the Malay and things like that. So when Anwar came in, he wanted to put in what I feel that what he was doing was trying to shift the Malay.
That was when he was in UMNO.
From you see, before he came into UMNO, and then he put up the so-called Islamic reform. Now, the Islamic reform is already happening in Indonesia, in various parts of the world. This is the evolution of the Malay intellect. The Malay intellect, the professionals, the engineers, they went overseas, they came back, they have all these things. So it was happening with or without him. There were leaders like Syahri Sunggip, who headed the Jemaah Islah, but not really very known. But they are very strong in this sense. In the United States, I joined the Malaysian Islamic Study Group, and in the UK, they have the IRC. It's all over the place. So it's not about Anwar alone. The young people went overseas, they came in, and that was the scenario in which Anwar tapped on, because he was just one agent. When he wanted to go into politics, there were two paths. Number one, with Parti Islam Malaysia, or number two, with UMNO. And he chose UMNO against the advice of a lot of his companions, I heard, that they did not agree. They think he should have gone with Parti Islam Malaysia. But he wanted with, I understand, because a lot of things the Islamic reform do not agree with is a lot with the so-called cleric or the ustaz punya mindset, because they are trained in a different way. They are trained in the traditional Islam. The Islamic reform the wave was headed by professionals. So many non-Malays don't understand the battle or the battleground of Islamic reform was not against any non-Malay. It was against the Malays in the traditional and cultural aspect of Islam. The institutions of Islam, like the Jabatan Agama.
So what do you think he's trying to do now?
In the past, that was what he was trying to put up the idea of a modern progressive Islam. And that's why he had to put in all those things into the government, because if that did not happen, then sooner or later conservatism of Islam would have come in.
But assuming he had not done that in the 80s, probably
no, because he had done that in the 80s in preparation for him taking over the country, and that's where
so he had the agenda of bringing in the Islamic values, because he wanted to bring in a progressive Muslim leadership in the
Yes, that's right.
But up to the time of Tun Mahathir, it was never that way. Do you agree?
Because Mahathir was the one who was the leading. You cannot, overtake him in what sense.
Yeah, until Tun Mahathir was there, until before he brought Anwar Ibrahim into the government, there wasn't such thing in the government system.
There wasn't what?
There wasn't Islamization penetrating into the government system until Anwar brought in
Yes,
the injection of the
that's
Islamic
right.
values.
Because as I said, in the Southeast Asian region, especially with Indonesia, Islamic reform was going to happen with or without Anwar. And how it might happen, there might have been several scenarios. If Anwar was not in government, it could have happened in other ways. He might have joined a political party, or he may set up another political party, but Mahathir offered a different way. By taking Anwar in, dolah whatever you want, he said something like that maybe. Then PAS was checkmated for many years. So until he was ready, then Tun Mahathir took him out. He just wanted a stopgap measure to checkmate Parti Islam Malaysia. But Anwar, of course, he wanted to take Islamic reform because that is the future. I mean, Islam is going to be there, and how is it going to be there? Is it going to be there in this conservative sense that you listen to what Terengganu is doing with all their policies and all that? Or you're going to have with this kind of Madani?
What modernization in Islam that he's trying to bring into the country?
Well, I think if you look at this aspect of Islam, and if you are not careful in talking about it, then you will be accused by many Malays to be liberal, all these very dirty words that has been thrown at. But actually what it is simply the idea of Islam that gives dignity to humanity. That's basically it. I mean, the Islam that I know, I'm not quoting Anwar Ibrahim here, I'm not trying to be a salesman to Anwar, this is what I understand. Now, I was never invited to be in Abib, never invited to be in Ikram, because I like reading other religions and comparing and things like that. And I happen to see that a lot of the books like Asian Renaissance, when I read by Anwar Ibrahim, also read the same book that I've been reading. He is a different Muslim than most of the Muslims, even in the Islamic reform movement, because they are basically looking at Islam in a very, I don't know, I think quite parochial, in the sense that they're not looking at other aspects of spirituality.
So you are now comparing between Anwar Ibrahim and past, but you have left out UMNO. UMNO has been ruling the country for 60 years. In UMNO's constitution, very clearly stated that they will protect the Malay race and the Islam religion. Okay, and they have been doing that successfully for 60 years. So what difference will Anwar bring? They were also modern. There wasn't any major incidents during their time.
Because at that time, you have to, again, people make this comparison so simplistically.
Okay.
You know, you don't have the social media. The social media is a huge thing. Then you do not have the Malay middle class who had become quite wealthy after the Dasar Ekonomi Baru. Regardless of whatever academic saying that we have not reached I think we've overreached, even though I don't have the so-called academic data, but I can see going to shopping all the time that, okay, it's there. Now, what happens to Muslims, let's say, what happens to, say Koreans or Japanese when they have money? They do a lot of traveling. But what happens with Muslims when they have money? They get into religion, okay? Because this is how I look at a lot of my friends who are now middle class and upper middle class, and they are retiring, even though they've never spoken about Islam or never even cared about the Islamic reform movement when we were in the US. But now they are all turning to ustaz, inviting to the house, and then they are all turning into what I term as cultural Muslim. And they just want to be, at peace when they die and something like that. But the problem here is their mind is very conservative because they're just learning about it. Okay, and they were just learning about it. So the ustaz also who comes to teach are not those who are trained in the wider sense of spirituality, wider sense of psychology or education, whatever. They just basically.
Why is that situation?
Because that's why I said the cultural Islam, I explained it in one of the podcasts, I said Islam in Malaysia is like this. You became a Muslim simply because your name is Mohamad Tajuddin, that's called cultural. You know, you become a Muslim cultural, and that cultural Islam is both in the social sense and fortunately or unfortunately, in the legal sense. And that's why people say, oh, then you are Muslim, then you cannot become other things. Because you already decide. Who decided? I didn't decide to become a Muslim. My father and the country decided by the sense that you are Malay and also the constitution. If you are a Malay, then you're a Muslim. No choice there. All right. So later on, this cultural Muslim, what I call the Piramli Muslim, they some of them, very few of them actually perform the whatever rituals like prayers and all that. Most are just having their life until they get old, and then they become a bit more conservative, because that is where and how Islam was supposed to be. Now, in the political realm, you see that these institutions controlling the minds of the Muslim, what can be done, what cannot be done, and if any reform does not happen to Islam in the West, in the United States, there is an intellectual reform. It's called International Institute of Islamic Thought, that said that all the knowledge discipline must be quote unquote Islamized. Now I was convinced at that time it was good. Now I'm having second thoughts about it. But whatever it is, they were looking at intellectualization, meaning all the sciences, because the ulama couldn't talk about it and they didn't want to talk about it. So how are you going to move forward? Let's say you have a system where you can transplant a pig's heart into the human heart. What's going to happen then? You know, so who's going to be heading towards this? So Anwar proposed the idea that Western civilization had come to a certain idea of stagnant situation where they developed the framework of welfare, everything good, but then they have some problem because they left spirituality and religion because of their past with Christianity and all that. And so there is a problem in the idea of conscience of how you want to be dealing with. So he proposed the idea that, look, if you have this idea of religion, then you'll be automatically scared of God and also doing good and all this kind of thing. So that's basically the framework. Now another aspect of that kind of thinking says that, well, you should just go all the way and replace the constitution with the Quran and Sunnah. Now, I've never heard Anwar Ibrahim talking about.
Okay, coming back to Anwar Ibrahim, okay, you are trying to say that he is actually trying to modernize Islam. Is that what? That's what I get in my mind. Is that right?
The word itself is a very dangerous word to use. Okay. When in fact, if you say such things like you're going to modernize Islam, means you're going to.
Is he trying to portray open-minded Muslim?
Yeah, it's actually, Islam is open-minded if you look at it in one sense. So in one sense, what is happening is the idea that interpreting Islam within what I call the humanistic humanistic construct.
Is that what he's trying to do?
That's what I believe that he's trying to do. It's just that the manner of our explanation will fall on people like the muftis. The mufti is not going to understand this. Okay, they're not going to understand all this idea about accepting other religion as a kind of a great spirituality, and all these things they will not accept it. Okay, so how do you navigate or propose such ideas of what we term as openness and inclusiveness in Islam to a group that has the legal power, a group also that has the social power, like the Malays and also the madrasa and the school? These are the social power. How do you navigate that?
What is he doing to balance between the social power and the?
Okay, now here is a problem with Anwar from my perspective. Okay, I said that he is 30 years too late. Okay, meaning that his mind is still in the 1990s. Okay, and therefore, if after 1998 he was not in prison and all that, and we don't have the social media and everything, where you can control what you say as a leader and all that, I think Malaysia would move along very well, because then he could influence the university very drastically, like what Mahathir did, and also influence the institution of religion. But that happened 1998, and then he was in prison for like many years. I think almost like 20 years. There's a gap. What happened during that gap was the Muslim developed their own you know, when they became older, they have more money, as I said, they became to come in Islam, and there is no guidance. The agenda number one was to get him out of prison, and the agenda of development, what? They cannot, because they were seen as agitators, rebel groups and things like that. So it stagnated. 20 years of stagnant idea of development, of reform that was planned. This is what I view. And then when he got out, and then we won the 2018, then new politics come in with the social media and all that. And then when he became prime minister, he's in front of a coalition government. So it's I'm not trying to make excuses. If I were him, you are having to operate with these kind of people who never really understood or even want to understand the idea of an open and inclusive Islam.
But he seemed to be working very well with UMNO. There's no issue. He seemed to be working very well with Sabah and Sarawak. So I don't see any problem in him carrying out his reform programs because nobody has objected to it openly. He has promised reforms. For example, he promised to bring openness in the government system. But when he became the Prime Minister, he extended the term of the MACC director for no reason. When his own party members said, kalau kita menang, we'll come after MACC chief first. But he went against what his party members said and what he preached by extending the MACC term. And then there is a public perception out there. He is meddling in the judiciary. The very same person who opposed to Tun Mahathir meddling in the judiciary. And I think even during Najib's time, he has issued statements against. Now in the public domain, there is a perception that he is trying to fast track or he's trying to appoint the current AG as the Chief Justice of Malaya, and eventually that will lead to him becoming the Chief Justice. So there's public perception that he's trying to meddle in the judiciary. He promised reform in the police. Nothing's happening, right? So what I mean is, the people out there who voted for him, leave Islam aside, the people who voted for him are looking forward for this. Unless he tells, look, I have problem implementing this because UMNO and Sabah and Sarawak oppose, what is the problem in making sure the judiciary is run smoothly, the police is run smoothly, administration of government is run smoothly? What's the problem with that?
Well, this is a very interesting question, because when you look at Malaysians, it seems that everybody can be Prime Minister. It seems that every keyboard warrior, whether in the UK or here, seems as if they can replace Anwar Ibrahim anytime, any day, when they forget that no one is going to appoint them to be Prime Minister because they are not head of a political party. Even like yourself, who's the head of a political party, you probably will never be the Prime Minister because of so-called race, even though I disagree with that. So here's the situation. Then there are also business people out there who's used to running businesses, buying new business and firing people left and right and making changes so that the new business venture can go off. But here we are talking about a government. We're talking about 60 years of institution where each of all the ministries are filled with civil servant that has been coached by a previous administration in idea of the superiority of Malayness and the idea of getting
but he
something
was also
and all
part
that.
of that government before in the UMNO.
Now you must also look at the idea that if you want to change things, it cannot be such things like, number one, you want to change very drastically, especially when you are still not in control of all political parties. Look at the idea of the police. Okay, the police, we are looking at the police in a manner that this police, who actually is in charge of the police? Okay, seems to be like they are in charge of themselves. And if you were to read some of the books written by ISA tahanan like Syahri Sunggep, they boast that who select the Prime Minister, we select the Prime Minister, says the special branch. Maybe they were boasting, but maybe they were not. So what I'm trying to say here is that if you go into a certain ministry and start making changes without understanding the lay of the landscape, I think that's going to be trouble to you. So that's why things have to take a step-by-step.
So you're saying that the Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim doesn't have control of the civil service?
Who has the control of the civil service? Unless you are somebody like Tun Dr. Mahathir, who has been there for a long time and has his tentacles all over, okay, then you are in quote-unquote control of the civil service. Now, how can you come into a situation of a certain institution where you cannot fire people or demote people just like that because it is controlled by the civil service? That's how we designed it.
Okay, that part I understand, but I'm just curious. Why was there a need to extend the MACC director's tenure? He finished his term. That's an easy way to change, right? That's what I don't understand.
I understood it perfectly. Okay.
What would be the
I
reason?
may not agree with it, but I understand why. I don't think it's proper to say it very, I think clearly here. I don't think that would be perceived very well.
Okay.
But I understand perfectly why that was done.
But okay, coming back to the sentiment of non-Malays, okay. Generally, the non-Malays feel cheated because for almost 17, 20 years, they've been hearing about reform, every other election, reform and all that, But they feel disappointed that there are few things that can be done, low-hanging fruits, yet not done by the Prime Minister and his fellow, PH ministers and all that. So why do you think they should give PM Anwar another chance?
Now, with regards to changing things, as I said, sometimes there are things you want to change. When you want to change something, sometimes you put out the political optics of that change. Meaning, you want people to see, look, I've changed this. Like the salary hike and all that. So you want the political optic. But there are some things that you want to change, you don't want the political optic. So it can be done in rather silent. Okay? Because if it gets out, then it will create some problem with this other group, and you can see so many social media, anything under the sun, they would make a problem with the coming from the government. So that is something that you have to deal with. Now, with regards to other changes that you might want to take, that's where I said that whether you are a good politician or a bad politician, so the optics about doing things for the Malay must be there. And that's why it must be seen that the Malays are being taken care of in this manner, while you do some changes that are not really seen very much.
Okay, now I think the optics are very clear. He is doing, taking a lot of initiatives to help the Malays and Bumiputras. I think the optics are clear. But I was surprised myself when he went for an Indian function and he says, "Saya tolong orang Melayu, you all don't get angry," number one.
Sorry, he said what?
He says, "I'm helping the Malays, you all don't get jealous and don't get angry." On another occasion, he told the Indians, "You don't ask me anything because if I start helping you, the Malays will get angry." I don't think that was received well by the non-Malays. I think the Indians have got no problem. He can help the Malays, previous governments have been helping the Malays, Bumiputras. I think there's no issue there. But he himself very openly said he agrees that the Indians are the poorest among the poor. Yet, when he came into power, he tells the Indians, "Don't ask me anything because if I do, then the Malays will get angry." It doesn't make sense because he has not done anything extra. In fact, Najib made an allocation for the first time under the, I think, Rancangan Malaysia ke-11 ke-10, I'm not too sure. After the Hindraf memorandum, he made an allocation. So the Indians see that as a betrayal from Anwar Ibrahim. What do you have to say about that?
Well, this is a situation where I might agree with the idea that, we are all humans, okay? So having to be, you may be right consciously, but you may not be correct politically or the political optics. So I found that there's a lot of things that Anwar was saying, and I was wondering, why is it only him is saying it? Where are the other leaders? The other leaders from PKR. In fact, that is very critical. I mean, anything happens to me, who is the next leadership in command? How do we look at the narrative? Who's going to take charge of the narrative? Things like that. So it seems to be a kind of a one-man show. And that's why when he met with when he became Prime Minister, I told my wife, now he's going to go to the mosque and to the universities. And I was right. But he is already 30 years too late. The universities, which I have been criticizing, quote unquote, useless, I said. Okay, I know most of the professors, they are already in a different culture. The culture of being safe as Malay and the culture of not thinking in a broader perspective. They're all in their own silos. And so when he spends so much time talking to students, again, students also are no longer like him. in the times of 1980s or 1970s. These are students which are different, and that's why he got into trouble by chastising the one of the Indian mahasiswa when he kept asking about meritocracy and all that.
But what is preventing him from assisting the poor Indian community? What is preventing him?
Well, if you luluskan peruntukan for vernacular school, then you have the message from the Perikatan Nasional and all that.
There has always been allocations for the vernacular schools. There have been always allocation for the Indian community, and everybody in the country accepts that the allocation given to the Indian community is insufficient. Let me give you an example. In 2014, when I struck a deal with Najib then, prior to that, I had a meeting with Pakatan Harapan leadership. No, that time was Pakatan Rakyat leadership. So PAS was with Pakatan Rakyat then. Okay, so we gave a memorandum, and in that memorandum, all three parties studied, PAS, DAP, and PKR. We had a meeting. I went for that meeting, and in that meeting, PAS was represented by their Secretary General, Mustafa Ali. Mustafa Ali said, having read the document, he said, benda ni kalau kita tak buat dalam Islam dosa. DAP said, no problem, we got no issue because these are real issues. And PKR said, this is a racist document. So, today after becoming the Prime Minister, the Indians are again put in the same position that they were before. There no assistance whatsoever. And the excuse that he is worried about Muslims, opposing him for helping Indians, I think PAS made it very clear. Kalau kita tak tolong dosa dalam Islam. So I can't understand what's preventing him.
Well, let's say you seem to be liking Najib so much.
No. I never said I like him. I resigned from.
So let's say that he's doing some things for the Indian. Now, would the opposition party make it into a racist issue? No, definitely not.
There wasn't.
Definitely not. But not the other way around.
When Najib did, PAS didn't complain about it?
Of course not, because they are in cahoots with Najib eventually. All right? So,
PAS was never with UMNO.
The point here is that I'm trying to say is that when you are in the, let's say, in the UMNO situation where you control all the things, and then when you say that, okay, now, because you're asking, then I'm going to give you money. Well, now, who's going to make that into a racial issue? But here, at the moment, the climate is different. Anything and everything becomes a race and religion, not a racial issue anymore. Race is already outdated. I was invited to come to some forum to talk about race and things like that. And I said, this one, so waste of time. No, it's a religion.
So, Anwar Ibrahim helping the Indians will become a
issue.
religious
Will become a religious and campur race issue juga lah. Okay, so that is where I think that that's what I said. Politics is about timing, and it's also about context, and it's also about certain audience at certain time. I mean, that's how I understand it. Okay. If you are going to do something, sure, you can do it, but it's different in a company or in our certain situations and things like that. That's why I understand. I'm not trying to find excuses. I believe that if you were to, agree to whatever that was being asked, then that's another point. Another point I wanted to say also, I don't want to be second guessing Anwar Ibrahim. This is my opinion as I see what he's doing. So definitely people shouldn't interpret that what I say is what actually Anwar is actually doing. I'm just reading it.
Sure. So let's move on to PAS. In your article in FMT, you seem to be raising issues about, PAS, the axis of PAS and UMNO shouldn't be in power. Now, my question is this. What is wrong if PAS rules the government? What is wrong if Haria Wang becomes the Prime Minister?
I was going to write an article called Lain Hulu, Lain Parang, PAS Dulu and PAS Sekarang. Okay? I was with PAS for 30 years. Okay? I was a member of PAS. There's a picture of me in Hadi Awang's house talking to him when he was the Chief Minister of Terengganu. Okay? So I slept in his mosque in Marang. I've been to a lot of the Muktamar. I've given money to PAS in the past. I've even given one ceramah on the PAS platform at one time. That my career went in a certain way because I was seen to be someone that is not pro Barisan Nasional or government. So I understood PAS. Now PAS in the past is talking about the idea of Islam almost the same way as what Anwar is talking about Islam, what he's saying right now, because they had people like Mat Sabu and Zulkifli and all that. But they were still slightly hardline, but then they are tempered with such of these ideologues, we call them. The present PAS, I don't see any ideologues at all, and I was totally shocked when Hadi Awang made the deal to work with UMNO before the 2018 election. I was shocked. Before that, there was also even talk with Harun Din, and I didn't want to believe it until when 2018 came. We saw PAS putting candidates all over. I know they don't have money. Where did they get the money? Okay, and there was an idea that there was this so-called 90 million ringgit being given by Sarawak report and all that. Okay lah, so that one, I said, well, I'm not going to support this party if they're going to go like that, but that is something political, that's fine. Then after the election in 2022, I saw that he was talking about the non-Malays, calling, as I said, I've been with PAS for 30 years, and people ask me, where do I learn Islam? One of my mentors is Hadi Awang. I have 200 of his cassettes, listen to him talk about the Quran and all that, among other writers and other speakers. He called the non-Malays animals at one time. He said mereka ni tidak mempunyai maruah seperti binatang on the issue of dress codes and things like that. I mean, I've never heard him speak like that for 30 years, and suddenly he goes into that kind of mode, and then he accused the non-Malays of corruptible. When in fact, in which Islamic way that you are talking about? In Islam, if you are a person, you are just an ordinary person. You can be tempted this and tempted that and all that. So if you do harm, then it's a sinful act, and also the wrong act. It's just like that. There's no difference with anything. And the worst of the worst at the moment was when the Kunut Nazilah was read in Parliament. I mean, who would have thought that somebody would read this thing and declare the whole unity government people as the enemies of Islam? I mean, that came as a total shock. Calling people kafir harbi and all that. I mean, some of the UMNO members had done that the same way. But the shock there was declaring. So the PAS that we see now, okay, is something that I will not trust, okay, and I would not recommend it. If it was the PAS of the past, now that was a different PAS.
So when did this change take place?
This changed in 2016 when these people were kicked out. I was in the meeting to decide whether the people like Mohamad Sabu, because they lost the election in PAS, and then they were at a situation where should they be in PAS and wait for a certain situation, or they should get out. And I was in that meeting with a few other people. I was surprised to be called, and I fought for separation from this party, because I said this is useless, this is a very dangerous extremist party already, then we need to have that. I think now when I look back, I think I might be wrong, because Amanah proved to be a very weak party. It is the weakest of all, and if without DAP and without PKR, they would never even win any single seat at all. And I don't even see them fighting against the Islamic conservatism and extremism, even though they have people like Mujahid Rawa, who's an intellectual and all that. So that is the situation where now PAS is being controlled by the things that what Mahathir had said. So I have to admit Mahathir was right in one sense, that if you let this party control, then you'll be controlled by the so-called clerics who do not have the training to bring Malaysia forward.
To run the country.
To run the country.
Now, on that note, so we are looking, based on whatever you have said, my understanding is that eventually, it will be a PAS government eventually. So, assuming, and this is just on assumption, PAS rules in GE16, okay, I would guess FDI would drop tremendously. Foreign companies would pull out from Malaysia, and Malaysia will no longer be a venue for international events, sporting, music festivals, And the past ulamas would not have a clue how to run the government. That would cost the government coffers. The people will suffer. Now, wouldn't that be giving Malaysians, especially the Malays who are thinking along the hardline, who are taking the hardline stance, wouldn't that be giving them a chance to get enlightened with the past government much earlier before it's too late? Wouldn't that be an eye-opener for the Malays?
I don't understand.
No, assuming they rule in G16, they win. As I said, FDI will drop, businesses will drop, countries' coffers will go down, people will suffer. So once and for all, before it's too late, isn't it not better for the people to be exposed to the weak leadership of past earlier, and they understand that they need to modernize, they need to think about nation building and move forward rather than being conservative? Wouldn't that be giving a chance for the Malaysians to learn? Because you have said very clearly that more Malays are becoming more conservative. Wouldn't that be, rather than later, wouldn't that be better for them to rule one term, GE16?
In politics, anything can happen. And I have lived long enough to look at, what you say, now is not what you say tomorrow. Okay, because that is what they call political flexibility or political malleability, or whatever it is. And the idea that perhaps if past were given quote unquote the trust, and they might then have to force to be thinking in a different way, and that would be something very interesting. I think that could be explored, and that may be a scenario. But watching whatever that they have done now, of course, that is something of a bleak picture. And as I said, I do not see any of the other leadership, who would be able to actually accept such ideas at the moment. People talk about Samsuri, but still, I don't see anything from him when I listen to what he has to say, because these are not the ideologues. But politics is the practical thing. All right, you might call somebody animals one day, you might be embracing that person the next day. Look at what happened with the Barisan Alternative with the DAP, and then now they are saying all sorts of things about the DAP. So all things can happen. And one of the good things that could happen to the country if Perikatan Nasional comes into power, I don't think you'll have all this extremist issue, because they will no longer be fanning that, because they will be busy running the country, maybe running down the country or running the country. That one is another matter altogether. But you must understand, you will introduce a majority Malay government that is almost like the past was UMNO and Barisan Nasional, but here with the religious element. And the idea of the RUU 355, potong tangan sana sini and all that, and then the looming presence of the Iranian model of governance with the so-called Ulama Council, that is something that you need to actually look at, because many people don't understand the different models of political Islam. One of the models that I suspect PAS is looking for, and if you look at their present organization, is the so-called Ulama Council. And that Ulama Council, the Iranian model,
Prof, we have come to our last question now. My question is this: you said so much about past conservative, past conservative attitude, but there is also a talk out there in the public domain that PMX Anwar Ibrahim is striking a deal with PAS in preparation for the next election. What would you say if that becomes true? What would you say?
Well, I don't know much about that. As I said, I don't know who are the players in PAS at the moment, aside from the ones that I see. People like Sanusi, look at Ahmad Padli, look at a little bit of Shamsuri. These are the things, these are the people that I can see. Perhaps there is a layer that I cannot see. Okay, and some people are saying that there are factions within PAS who disagrees with the hardline of Hadi Awang. And if that were true, as I said, I can't see it. Right? Now, if that were the case, and that some sort of a deal to be struck in terms of politics, and especially with Islam and nation building at the agenda, I mean, why not? This is something that could be very positive. But at the moment, as I said, I'm dealing with what I can only see. And if someone were to say, you know, you have to be with Parti Islam Malaysia, I don't like it, because I don't trust this party, because they have shown a level which I have never thought that I would see or live to see. You know, you use the word conservative, right? I'm using the word extremist, okay? And I'm a Muslim, okay? And I look at how, you see, I measure people how they treat others, okay? If you don't treat people with dignity and with respect, then it shows a certain, you know, jiwa or the soul, a kerohanian, that you think other people are really not as good or the way that you perceive them. So I think it's a very, very dangerous thing to actually do. But as I said, I have not information about the internal politics of PAS. If there is such a group that is not really, you see, even using the word hardline, you know, some people will say, oh, this is going to be compromised or something like that. Also very difficult. But certainly in politics, anything can happen, like having Zahid Hamidi or UMNO as part of the...
Yes, I think that was a shocker.
Yeah.
You know, early hours in the day after the general elections, you know, the very person PMX called Penyanga and all that, you know, and he went to the office and shaking hands. I think that was...
So that's why my message, my last message, is that now the Agong in one sense had to play politician, whether of course Agong doesn't like to be known like that, but he did us a great favor and also taught us one thing, that we, the rakyat, also have to be politician minded. We cannot be this rakyat says, okay, I want to go and vote and I'll choose mine. But we also need to know that politics means you have to work with some people. And politics also knows that in order to change something, you need not the straight way, but a kind of a meandering way. And that is something that we so far have not learned. Okay, we are like little children wanting things now, like, you know, in the story Peter Pan said, you want now. You want things now. You want to see things. Well, I'm sorry, it cannot happen now. It has to happen at a certain pace, number one. And number two, you might not be able to see it, because politics, as I said, is about optics also. So the optics may be there to be very, very clear, and therefore certain things may not be clear, but that certain thing is actually moving forward. And that is how we must be very careful about how we see things, because like Frank Lloyd Wright says, you don't see things at, you have to see things in. And that's the difference.
Thank you very much, Prof, for your time, and I hope we'll have another opportunity to discuss on other matters.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting.